The blood on her hands had been scrubbed away 3 towns ago, but Josephine Barrett still felt it burning against her palms as she stumbled into Custer, Montana territory, in the blazing summer of 1882. She had been riding for 6 days straight, stopping only when her horse refused to continue, and now she swayed on her feet in front of the general store, her dress caked with dust, and her auburn hair falling from its pins. The main street stretched before her like a judgment, lined with wooden buildings that seemed to watch her with suspicion. She had exactly $4 to her name and nowhere else to run. The door to the general store opened, and a woman in a crisp blue calico dress stepped out, taking one look at Josephine before her expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "Lord have mercy, you look about ready to collapse. When did you last eat?" Josephine opened her mouth to respond, but the world tilted sideways. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground, and she found herself staring up into the weathered face of a man with dark eyes and silver threading through his hair. He wore a shopkeeper's apron and smelled of tobacco and coffee. "Get her inside, Thomas," the woman said. "I will fetch Dr. Harrison." When Josephine woke, she was lying on a narrow bed in a room above the general store. Late afternoon light slanted through a small window, and she could hear the sounds of the town below, horses and wagons, voices calling to one another. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the terrible thing that had happened in Denver, forgot the reason she had fled. Then it all came rushing back. She sat up too quickly and nausea rolled through her. The door opened, and the woman from earlier entered with a tray. "Easy now. You have been out for several hours. I am Martha Kelly, and you are in my husband's store. Dr. Harrison says you are severely dehydrated and half-starved." "I need to leave," Josephine said, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. "You are in no condition to go anywhere. Now drink this water slowly and tell me your name." Josephine Barrett." Martha settled into a chair beside the bed, her hands folded in her lap. She had the kind face of someone who had seen hardship but refused to let it harden her. "Where are you from, Josephine?" "Back east," Josephine lied, the words automatic. She had been lying about her origins since she left Denver, had created a whole false history to explain her presence in each town she passed through. Martha's expression suggested she did not believe a word, but she did not press. "Well, Miss Barrett, you are welcome to stay here until you recover your strength. We have this room for travelers who need it." Over the next 3 days, Josephine slowly regained her energy. Martha brought her meals and clean clothes, asking no questions about her past. Thomas Kelly, Martha's husband, was equally kind, offering her a small job helping in the store once she was well enough to stand for more than a few minutes. It was on her 4th day in Custer that Josephine first saw Xander Kane. She was sweeping the boardwalk in front of the general store when she heard the thunder of hooves. A group of riders came down the main street, and at their head was a man on a buckskin horse that moved like water over stones. He sat tall in the saddle, his broad-brimmed hat shading a face that looked carved from the Montana landscape itself, all sharp angles and sun-bronzed skin. He wore dusty leather chaps over worn denim and a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. A gun belt sat low on his hips, but it was not the weapons that caught her attention. It was the way he carried himself, with an easy confidence that suggested he knew exactly who he was and felt no need to prove it. The riders pulled up in front of the saloon across the street, and as they dismounted, the man in the lead glanced in her direction. For a moment, their eyes met, his as gray as storm clouds, and Josephine felt something shift in her chest. Then he tipped his hat to her and turned away, following his companions into the saloon. "That is Xander Kane," Martha said from the doorway behind her. He runs the biggest cattle ranch in the territory. Good man, though he keeps to himself mostly. Lost his wife and baby daughter to cholera about 5 years back. Has not been the same since, they say. Josephine watched the saloon door swing shut behind him. He looks lonely. I expect he is. But he has his ranch and his work, and that seems to be enough for him. Martha paused. Why do you ask? No reason, Josephine said quickly, returning to her sweeping. But for the rest of the day, she found her thoughts drifting back to the cowboy with the storm cloud eyes. That evening, as she was helping Thomas close up the door opened and Xander Kane walked in. Up close, he was even more imposing, standing well over 6 feet tall with shoulders that seemed to fill the doorway. He removed his hat, revealing dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar, and nodded to Thomas. Evening, Tom. I need to pick up those supplies I ordered last week. Of course, Xander. Let me get them from the back. Thomas disappeared into the storeroom, leaving Josephine and Xander alone in the fading light. She kept her eyes on the counter, pretending to organize the receipts, but she could feel his gaze on her. After a moment, he cleared his throat. You are new in town. It was not a question, but Josephine nodded anyway. Yes, sir. I arrived a few days ago, running from something or running to something. The directness of the question startled her, and she looked up to find him watching her with an expression that was curious but not unkind. I do not know what you mean. I have seen that look before. The way you hold yourself, always ready to bolt. The way you watch the street like you are expecting someone to come riding in after you. He leaned against the counter, and she caught the scent of leather and sage. I am not judging. Half the people in Montana are running from something. That is what the West is for. And what are you running from? The words came out before she could stop them, and she immediately regretted her boldness. But Xander just smiled, a sad curve of his mouth that did not reach his eyes. Memories. But those follow you anywhere, I suppose. Thomas returned with a crate of supplies, breaking the moment, and Xander paid for his goods and left. But his words stayed with Josephine long after he was gone. The way you watch the street like you are expecting someone to come riding in after you. He had seen through her so easily, had recognized the fear she tried so hard to hide. That night, lying in her narrow bed, she allowed herself to think about Denver for the first time since she fled. About the man who had promised to marry her, who had seemed so charming and respectable. About the night she discovered he was already married, that everything had been a lie. About the confrontation, the rage in his eyes, the way he had come at her. About the lamp she had thrown in self-defense, and the way the flames had caught the curtains, spreading faster than she could have imagined. She had run, had not stayed to see if he made it out. The next morning she had heard the whispers in the hotel lobby about the fire, about the prominent businessman who had died, about the woman who had been seen leaving his office just before the blaze started. She had not meant to kill him. It had been an accident. But who would believe her? The tears came then, hot and silent, soaking into her pillow. She had been running for so long, always looking over her shoulder, always afraid. And now she was here in this small Montana town, trying to build something from the ashes of her old life. The next week passed in a blur of work and worry. Josephine threw herself into helping at the general store, grateful for the distraction. Martha and Thomas treated her with kindness, never pressing her about her past, and slowly she began to feel almost safe. Xander Kane came into the store twice more that week, always at dusk, always alone. Each time he spoke to her briefly, asking simple questions about how she was settling in, if she needed anything. His voice was low and rough, like gravel under wagon wheels, and something about it made her feel steadier, more grounded. On Saturday evening, as she was sweeping the boardwalk, He rode up alone and dismounted, tying his horse to the rail. The main street was quiet. Most of the town gathered at the church for a social. "Miss Barrett," he said, climbing the steps to stand beside her. "May I speak with you a moment?" Her heart began to race, but she nodded, leaning the broom against the wall. "Of course. I have been thinking about what you said about running from memories, and I wanted to tell you something." He turned to face her fully, his gray eyes serious. "Whatever it is you are running from, whatever happened in your past, it does not follow you here, not unless you let it." The words hit her like a physical blow, and she had to grip the railing to steady herself. "How can you say that? The past is always with us. We cannot just leave it behind." "No, but we can choose not to let it define us. We can choose to build something new." He gestured at the mountains rising purple in the distance, at the wide sky turning gold and crimson as the sun set. "This is a place where people get second chances, where who you are matters less than who you choose to be." Josephine felt tears prick her eyes. "You make it sound so simple." "It is not simple. It is the hardest thing in the world, but it is possible." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "When my wife and daughter died, I wanted to die too. I could not see past the grief, could not imagine a life without them. For a long time, I was just going through the motions, working myself to exhaustion so I would not have to think or feel." "What changed?" The question came out as barely a whisper. "One day I realized they would not want that for me. They would want me to live, really live, not just survive. So I made a choice to try. Some days are easier than others, but I am trying." He met her eyes. "Whatever you are running from, Miss Barrett, whatever you think you have done, you deserve that same chance, to try, to live." She wanted to tell him everything then, wanted to unburden herself of the terrible secret she carried, but the fear held her back. "What if I have done something unforgivable?" "Then you work to forgive yourself, and you do better going forward." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her hand where it gripped the railing. His fingers were calloused and warm. "You are not alone in this." The contact sent a jolt through her, and she looked down at their hands, his so much larger than hers. "Why are you being so kind to me? You do not even know me." "I know enough. I know you are scared. I know you are trying to start over. I know you have kind eyes and you work hard and you deserve someone to tell you that you are going to be all right." He squeezed her hand once gently, then let go. "And maybe I am being selfish. Maybe I have been alone too long and I recognize a kindred spirit when I see one." Before she could respond, they heard voices approaching, and Xander took a step back, putting a respectable distance between them. A group of townspeople rounded the corner, heading home from the church social, and the moment was broken. "Good evening, Xander," one of the men called. "Are you coming to the barn raising next week?" "I will be there, Henry." Xander tipped his hat to Josephine. "Good night, Miss Barrett." She watched him mount his horse and ride away into the gathering darkness, her hand still tingling from his touch. "Whatever it is you are running from, it does not follow you here. Not unless you let it." Could it really be that simple? Could she really build a new life here, free from the guilt and fear that had haunted her since Denver? That night, she dreamed of fire and woke gasping, the smell of smoke still in her nostrils. But when she went to the window and looked out at the quiet street, all was peaceful. The stars were brilliant overhead, more stars than she had ever seen in the city, and the mountains loomed like patient guardians in the distance. Maybe Xander was right. Maybe here in this wild and beautiful place she could learn to forgive herself. Maybe here she could learn to live again. The following week brought the barn raising that Henry had mentioned, and Martha insisted that Josephine come along. "The whole town will be there," she said, packing a basket with food. "It is a good chance for you to meet people, to feel part of the community." Josephine was hesitant. She had been keeping to herself, afraid that if people got too close they would see through her, would sense the darkness she carried. But Martha was insistent, and Thomas backed her up, so she found herself riding out to the Johnson farm in the back of their wagon. The scene that greeted them was one of organized chaos. Dozens of people were already there, the men working on the frame of the barn while the women set up long tables laden with food. Children ran everywhere, their laughter ringing out across the fields. It was a glimpse of the kind of community Josephine had never really known, everyone working together toward a common goal. She spotted Xander immediately. He had removed his shirt in the heat, working in just his undershirt, and she could see the play of muscles in his shoulders as he helped lift a heavy beam into place. Sweat gleamed on his skin, and his hair was damp against his forehead. He looked completely in his element, competent and strong, and something in her chest tightened at the sight. Martha noticed the direction of her gaze and smiled. He is a good man, that one. Could do with some softness in his life, though. That ranch of his is work from sunup to sundown. I am sure he is not interested in me, Josephine said quickly. I am sure you are wrong, Martha replied. I have seen the way he looks at you when he comes into the store, like you are water and he has been walking through a desert. Before Josephine could respond, a woman approached them, a baby on her hip and a toddler clinging to her skirts. She had a round, friendly face and tired eyes. Martha, thank goodness. Can you help me with the coffee? I cannot seem to manage everything at once. Of course, Helen. Josephine, this is Helen Johnson. It is her husband's barn we are raising. Josephine found herself drawn into the circle of women, helping with the food and the children, listening to their chatter and gossip. It felt strange and wonderful at the same time, this casual acceptance, this assumption that she belonged. No one asked probing questions about her past. They simply made space for her, as if she had always been there. As the afternoon wore on and the barn began to take shape, the men broke for food. Xander came to the table, accepted a plate with thanks, and made his way to where Josephine was sitting with Martha under a large cottonwood tree. May I join you, ladies? Martha beamed at him. Of course, Xander. Josephine was just saying how impressive the work is going. That was not at all what Josephine had been saying, but she kept her mouth shut as Xander settled onto the grass beside them, his long legs stretched out in front of him. He ate with the efficient focus of a man who was truly hungry, and she found herself watching the way his throat moved as he swallowed, the way his hands dwarfed the tin plate. When he finished, he set the plate aside and looked at her. Are you settling in all right? Yes, thank you. Everyone has been very welcoming. Good, that is good. He seemed to want to say more, but Martha stood up, brushing grass from her skirt. I had better go help with the desserts. Josephine, why do not you stay here and rest a moment? You have been working all morning. Before Josephine could protest, Martha was gone, leaving them alone under the tree. The sounds of the barn raising continued around them, but it felt as if they were in their own small world, separated from everything else. She is not subtle, Xander said, a hint of amusement in his voice. No, she is not. Josephine plucked at the grass, unsure what to say. I am glad you came today. I was hoping I would see you. The confession made her look up, and she found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You were. I have been thinking about our conversation. About second chances. He leaned back on his hands, his face tilted up to the sky. I have been dead inside for 5 years, going through the motions but not really living, and then you showed up in town and something shifted, like waking up after a long sleep. Josephine's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. Xander, I am not who you think I am. I have done things I do not care. He turned his head to look at her, his gray eyes fierce. Whatever you think you have done, I do not care. I care about who you are now, right here in this moment. I care about the way you smile at the children. I care about how hard you work, how you never complain. I care about the kindness in your eyes even when you are scared. You barely know me. Then let me know you. Spend time with me. Let me show you that you can trust me. It was the most terrifying and exhilarating thing anyone had ever said to her. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to protect herself, to keep her secrets locked away. But a larger part of her, the part that had been dying slowly since Denver, wanted desperately to say yes. I am afraid, she whispered. I know. I am afraid too. He sat up, turning to face her fully. I am afraid of caring about someone again, of opening myself up to that kind of pain. But I am more afraid of spending the rest of my life alone, of never taking the chance. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the vulnerability beneath the strength, the loneliness that matched her own. He was offering her something precious, something she had never expected to find. All right, she said softly. All right. The smile that broke across his face transformed him, erasing years of sorrow and making him look younger, lighter. He reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers, and they sat there under the cottonwood tree, hands clasped, while around them the barn rose beam by beam toward the sky. Over the next few weeks, Xander became a constant presence in Josephine's life. He came into town more often, always finding reasons to stop by the general store. He invited her to ride out to his ranch, and she went, marveling at the sprawling house he had built, the vast herds of cattle grazing on the rolling grassland. He introduced her to his ranch hands, men who clearly respected him, and showed her the small graveyard on a hill where his wife and daughter were buried. I come here sometimes, he told her, standing before the two simple wooden crosses, to talk to them, to tell them about my day. It helps. Josephine squeezed his hand. What do you think they would say about me? He considered this seriously. Anna would like you. She always had a soft spot for people who were hurting, who needed help. And little Sarah, she would have loved you on sight. She had no fear, that child. Ran to everyone with her arms wide open. I wish I could have met them. I wish you could have too. He turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. But I think they would want me to be happy. And you make me happy, Josephine, happier than I have been in years. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. They had not yet kissed, had been taking things slowly, but the tension between them was building, electric and undeniable. You make me happy too. You make me feel like I can breathe again. Then breathe, he murmured and lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But then she sighed against his lips, and his arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened into something urgent and necessary. He tasted like coffee and possibility, and she threaded her fingers through his hair, holding on as if he were the only solid thing in a spinning world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I am falling in love with you. I know it is too soon. I know we have only known each other a short time, but I cannot help it. You have brought me back to life. The words filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She wanted to say them back, wanted to tell him that she loved him too, but the secret still hung between them, a shadow she could not quite banish. Xander, there is something I need to tell you, about why I came here, about what happened before. He pulled back slightly, his hands still on her shoulders. You do not have to tell me anything you are not ready to share. But I want to. I need to. You deserve to know the truth about who I am. They walked back to the house and sat on the porch, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and gold. And there, with the mountains watching and the wind singing through the grass, Josephine told him everything. She told him about the man in Denver, about the lies and the betrayal, about the fire and the death, About running, always running, convinced that she was a murderer. The words poured out of her in a rush, and when she was done, she felt hollowed out, empty, waiting for his judgment. Xander was quiet for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then he took her hand. "You were defending yourself, but he died. I killed him." "You did not intend to kill him. You threw a lamp to protect yourself, and there was a fire. That is not murder, Josephine. That is an accident, a terrible accident, but not murder. The law might not see it that way. Maybe not, but I do." He turned to face her fully, his gray eyes intense. "You are not a killer. You are a woman who was put in an impossible situation and did what she had to do to survive. There is no shame in that." The tears came then, great wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Xander pulled her into his arms, holding her as she cried, murmuring soft words of comfort. "It is all right. You are all right. I have you." When the storm of emotion finally passed, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You do not think less of me. I think you are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever met, and I think you have been carrying this burden alone for far too long." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Whatever happens, we will face it together. You are not alone anymore." It was the absolution she had not known she needed, the acceptance she had been craving. And in that moment, sitting on the porch of his ranch house with the Montana sky darkening above them, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future after all. As summer turned to autumn, Josephine and Xander's relationship deepened. She spent more and more time at the ranch, learning about the cattle business, helping with the books and correspondence. The ranch hands accepted her presence without comment, and she found she enjoyed the work, the sense of purpose it gave her. Martha and Thomas were delighted with the match, and the town seemed to embrace them as a couple. Josephine began to feel truly at home in Custer, began to think of it not as a hiding place but as a real home. But the past has a way of catching up, no matter how fast you run. It was a crisp October morning when the stranger rode into town. Josephine was working in the general store, helping a customer select fabric, when she glanced out the window and saw him, a tall man in a dark suit, riding a gray horse. Something about the way he carried himself, the deliberate way he looked at each building, made her blood run cold. He dismounted in front of the sheriff's office and went inside. Josephine's hands began to shake. She excused herself and went to the back room, trying to breathe, trying to think. It might be nothing. It might be a coincidence, but she knew with a sick certainty that he was looking for her. Thomas found her there, white-faced and trembling. "Josephine, what is wrong?" "There is a man outside the sheriff's office. I think he might be looking for me." Thomas's expression grew serious. "Stay here. I will go find out what this is about." He was gone for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. When he returned, his face was grim. "He is a detective from Denver. He has been hired by the dead man's family to find you. They believe you set the fire deliberately." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "What is going to happen?" "Sheriff Collins wants to speak with you. But Josephine, you need to know he is a fair man. Tell him the truth, just as you told Xander. It will be all right." But Josephine was not sure anything would ever be all right again. The sheriff's office was small and cluttered, smelling of old tobacco and gun oil. Sheriff Collins was a grizzled man in his 50s with shrewd blue eyes. He gestured for Josephine to sit, then dismissed the detective, who left with obvious reluctance. "Now then, Miss Barrett," the sheriff said, settling behind his desk. "This gentleman says you are wanted in connection with a death in Denver. Says you deliberately set a fire that killed a man named Richard Holloway. What do you have to say about that?" Josephine took a shaky breath and told her story again, leaving nothing out. The sheriff listened without interrupting, his expression giving nothing away. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, studying her. "That is quite a tale." "It is the truth, I swear it. I believe you." The words were simple, but they carried weight. "I have been a lawman for 30 years, Miss Barrett. I know the difference between a killer and someone who was defending themselves. Question is, what to do about it." "What do you mean?" "Well, legally, you should go back to Denver, face a judge and jury. But between you and me, I am not convinced you would get a fair trial. The Holloways are a powerful family. They want someone to blame for Richard's death, and you are a convenient target." Hope fluttered in Josephine's chest. "So what happens now?" Now you go on about your business. As far as I am concerned, there is no evidence that you did anything wrong. That detective can report back to the Holloways that his investigation hit a dead end. You would do that for me. I would do that for justice." He stood, indicating the conversation was over. "You have made a good life here, Miss Barrett. You have proven yourself to be a valuable member of this community. I see no reason to destroy that over an accident that happened hundreds of miles away." Josephine felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you so much." "Do not thank me. Just keep being the woman you have become." "That is thanks enough." When she emerged from the sheriff's office, she found Xander waiting, his horse tied to the rail. He must have ridden in as soon as he heard. The relief on his face when he saw her was palpable. "What happened?" "The sheriff, he believes me. He is sending the detective away." She walked into his arms and he held her tight, his heart beating strong and steady against her ear. "It is over then. It is finally over. I think it is." She pulled back to look up at him. "I can stay. I can really stay." "You were always going to stay," he said firmly. "I would not have let them take you without a fight, but I am glad it did not come to that." That evening they rode out to the ranch together, and Xander built a fire in the hearth while Josephine made coffee. They sat together on the sofa, her head on his shoulder, watching the flames dance. "I was thinking," Xander said after a while, "this house is too big for one person. It was meant for a family." Josephine's heart began to race. "What are you saying?" He shifted, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small box. When he opened it, she saw a simple gold band with a single small diamond, winking in the firelight. "I am saying that I love you, Josephine Barrett. I am saying that you have given me a reason to live again, to hope again. I am saying that I want to spend the rest of my life with you if you will have me." He took her hand, his gray eyes serious. "Will you marry me?" The yes came without hesitation, rising from the deepest part of her. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her, deep and thorough, and she was kissing him back, all the fear and worry of the past months dissolving in the heat of their embrace. When they finally broke apart, both flushed and breathing hard, he smiled at her. "I love you," she said, the words feeling right and true. "I love you so much. I love you too, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone again." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Custer, with half the town in attendance. Martha cried through the entire ceremony, and Thomas had to lend her his handkerchief. Josephine wore a simple white dress that Martha had helped her make, and Xander wore his best suit, his hair freshly cut and his boots polished. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife and Xander kissed her, Josephine felt the last chains of her past fall away. She was not running anymore. She was home. The winter that followed was the happiest time of Josephine's life. She moved into the ranch house and threw herself into making it a true home, sewing curtains, planting a garden that would bloom in spring, learning to cook the hearty meals that Xander and his ranch hands needed. The work was hard but satisfying, and she fell into bed each night exhausted and content, Xander's arms wrapped around her. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. She learned about his childhood in Texas, about how he had come north as a young man to make his fortune. He learned about her life before Denver, about her parents who had died when she was young, about the aunt who had raised her with more duty than love. They shared their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets, building a foundation of trust and understanding. On cold winter nights, they sat by the fire, Xander reading aloud from the newspaper while Josephine mended clothes or worked on her knitting. Sometimes the ranch hands would join them, and they would play cards or tell stories, the house filled with laughter and companionship. In February, Josephine realized she was pregnant. She told Xander on a Sunday morning, both of them still in bed, the sun streaming through the bedroom window. For a moment, he simply stared at her, as if he could not quite process the words. Then a slow smile spread across his face and he pulled her into his arms. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" She had been nervous about his reaction, knowing how much he had lost. "Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am terrified and thrilled and grateful all at once." He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me this gift." The pregnancy was not easy. Josephine suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and the summer heat made her swell and ache. But Xander was endlessly patient, bringing her cool water, rubbing her feet, holding her hair back when she was sick. The ranch hands tiptoed around her as if she were made of glass, and Martha visited regularly, bringing remedies and advice. As her belly grew, so did Josephine's anxiety. She had never been around babies much, had no idea how to be a mother. What if she did it wrong? What if something went wrong? Xander seemed to sense her fears. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, he took her hand. "You are going to be a wonderful mother." "You do not know that." "Yes, I do. I see the way you care for everything around you, the way you tend your garden, the way you fuss over the ranch hands when they are sick, the way you talk to the horses. You have so much love to give, Josephine. This baby is lucky to have you. I just keep thinking about your first wife, about Anna. How am I supposed to live up to that? You are not supposed to live up to anything. You are not Anna, and I would not want you to be. You are Josephine, and I love you exactly as you are." He pulled her close, his hand resting on her stomach where the baby was kicking. "This is our family, our fresh start, and we are going to be just fine." She wanted to believe him, and slowly, as the months passed, she began to. The baby came on a crisp October morning, almost exactly a year after the detective had come to town. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Josephine thought she might not survive it. But Martha was there, and the doctor, and Xander, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. When the baby finally arrived, wailing and red-faced, the doctor announced, "It is a boy, a boy." They had a son. Xander cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face, and when the doctor placed the cleaned and wrapped baby in Josephine's arms, she looked down at the tiny, perfect face and fell completely in love. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." They named him William Thomas Kane, after Xander's father and the man who had taken Josephine in when she had nowhere else to go. William was a healthy baby with a good set of lungs, and he quickly became the center of their world. Xander was besotted, spending hours just watching his son sleep, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes. "I had forgotten what this felt like," he said one night, holding William against his chest while the baby dozed. "The weight of them, the smell, the way they fit so perfectly in your arms." Josephine understood what he was not saying, that holding William was both a joy and a bittersweet reminder of the daughter he had lost. "You think about Sarah every day, but it does not hurt the way it used to. I think she would have loved having a little brother." He looked up at Josephine, his eyes shining with unshed tears. You have healed something in me that I thought was broken beyond repair. You healed me too, she said softly. You gave me a home when I had nothing. You gave me a reason to stop running. Over the next few years, their family grew. William was followed by a daughter they named Anna Rose, after Xander's first wife and Josephine's mother. Then came another son, James, and finally a second daughter, Grace. The house that had once been so empty was now filled with noise and chaos, with laughter and tears and endless energy. Josephine threw herself into motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else. She was patient and firm, loving and practical, and the children thrived under her care. Xander was an involved father, teaching the boys to ride and rope, reading to the girls, always making time no matter how busy the ranch kept him. The ranch itself prospered. With Josephine managing the books and correspondence, Xander was free to focus on the cattle and the land. They expanded their herds, bought more acreage, hired additional hands. The Kane Ranch became known throughout Montana as one of the best-run operations in the territory. But it was not just about business. Xander and Josephine worked hard to create a legacy for their children, to build something that would last. They established a school for the ranch children, hired a teacher, made sure everyone who worked for them was treated fairly and paid well. They became pillars of the community, hosting church socials and barn raisings, helping neighbors in need. Josephine never forgot where she had come from, never forgot the darkness she had escaped. And because of that, she had a special empathy for people who were struggling, who were trying to outrun their pasts. More than once, she convinced Xander to hire someone that others had written off, to give them a second chance just as she had been given one. You are going to populate this ranch entirely with strays and misfits, Xander teased one evening, after she had insisted they take on a young man who had recently been released from jail. And what is wrong with that? You took a chance on me, and look how that turned out. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her soundly. Best decision I ever made. As the years passed, Montana changed around them. The Montana Territory became a state in 1889, bringing new laws and new opportunities. Railroads pushed deeper into the frontier, connecting small towns to the wider world. Homesteaders arrived in waves, plowing up the grasslands, building farms and fences. Xander watched these changes with mixed feelings. Part of him mourned the passing of the old ways, the wide open spaces that were gradually being tamed. But another part of him recognized that progress was inevitable, and he worked to adapt, to ensure the ranch would survive into the new century. In 1895, when William was 13 and Grace was just 5, Xander took Josephine up to the hill where his first wife and daughter were buried. They stood there in the spring sunshine, holding hands, watching the children play in the valley below. "You ever regret it?" Josephine asked quietly. "Taking me in, marrying me when you could have chosen a life without complications." Xander turned to her, and the love in his eyes took her breath away even after all these years. "Not for a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and the children, this life we have built together, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. I was so lost when I came here, so broken, and you put me back together. We put each other back together." He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You taught me that it was possible to love again, to open my heart even knowing the risk. You taught me that the past does not have to define us, that we can choose who we want to be. You told me that, you said it does not follow you here. And I was right, was I not? Look at you now. Look at the life you have created, the woman you have become. You are not that scared girl who stumbled into town all those years ago." "No," she agreed. "I am not. I am home." They stayed on the hill until sunset, talking about the past and the future, about their hopes for the children and the ranch. When they finally headed back to the house, Josephine felt a deep sense of peace. She had traveled such a long road to get here, had endured so much pain and fear. But it had all been worth it to find this place, this man, this family. The years continued to roll by, bringing both joys and sorrows. Thomas Kelly died peacefully in his sleep in 1897, and the whole town mourned him. Martha continued to run the general store with the help of her nephew, and she remained one of Josephine's closest friends. Sheriff Collins retired, and a younger man took his place, but the town remained a safe haven for those who needed it. William grew into a strong, capable young man, eager to take on more responsibility at the ranch. Anna Rose developed a love of books and learning, often begging her parents to let her continue her education back east. James was the quiet one, happiest when he was working with the horses. And Grace, the baby, was pure sunshine, bringing laughter wherever she went. Josephine watched her children grow with a mixture of pride and bittersweet nostalgia. They were her redemption, her proof that something beautiful could come from tragedy. Every time she looked at them, she thought about how close she had come to losing everything, and how grateful she was that Xander had seen past her fear to the woman she could become. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Xander surprised her with a trip to the territorial capital. They left the children with Martha and spent 3 days exploring, eating in fancy restaurants, staying in a real hotel. It was a different world from the ranch, full of noise and people and excitement. But on their last evening, as they stood on the hotel balcony watching the city lights, Josephine found herself homesick for the wide Montana sky, the sound of the wind through the grass, the laughter of her children. "Are you ready to go home?" Xander asked, as if reading her mind. "More than ready." He turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "I know I do not say it enough, but I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you have done. The home you have made, the children you have raised, the life you have built with me. You are my partner in every sense of the word, and I could not have done any of this without you." She reached up to cup his face, feeling the roughness of his beard against her palm. "We are a team, we always have been, and I would not want to do this life with anyone else." He kissed her then, deep and sweet, and she melted into him, still feeling that spark of desire even after 15 years of marriage. Some things never got old. When they returned to the ranch, the children greeted them with such enthusiasm that Josephine's heart swelled. This was what mattered. Not the past, not the fear, not the guilt she had carried for so long. This family, this love, this life. As Montana entered the 20th century, the Kane Ranch continued to thrive. William took over more of the day-to-day operations, allowing Xander to slow down a bit. Anna Rose went east to attend a women's college, writing long letters home about her studies and her dreams of becoming a teacher. James married a local girl and settled on a piece of land adjacent to the main ranch. And Grace showed signs of inheriting her mother's head for business, often helping with the books even at her young age. Xander and Josephine grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies moving a bit more slowly. But the love between them never dimmed. If anything, it deepened, tempered by time and trials into something unshakable. One evening, sitting on the porch and watching the grandchildren play, Xander took Josephine's hand. They were in their 50s now, still healthy and active but aware of the passage of time. "Do you remember the first time we met?" he asked. "You were sweeping the boardwalk in front of the general store, looking like a stiff wind might blow you away. I remember. You and your men rode in like you owned the town. I took one look at you and knew my life was about to change. I did not know how, but I knew. I thought you were going to ride right past and forget I existed. Never. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "I have loved you from the very beginning, even before I knew what I was feeling. You walked into my life and brought color to a world that had been gray for so long. You saved me," she said softly. "In every way a person can be saved. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me a future when I thought I had none. You loved me when I did not think I deserved to be loved. You always deserved it. You just needed to believe it." He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, exactly as she had done 1,000 times before. "I am so grateful for every day we have had together. Every morning I wake up next to you. I thank God for bringing you to Custer, for letting me be the one to find you." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The children's laughter echoed across the yard, and smoke rose from the bunkhouse chimney where the ranch hands were settling in for the evening. It was a scene of such perfect contentment that Josephine felt tears prick her eyes. This was what she had been running toward all along, though she had not known it. Not away from her past, but toward this future. Toward love and family and belonging. Toward a place where she could finally be herself, flaws and all, and be accepted. Xander had been right all those years ago. The past did not follow her here. She had left it behind, had built something new and beautiful in its place. And she had done it with this man by her side, this good, strong, loving man who had seen her at her worst and chosen to love her anyway. "What are you thinking about?" Xander asked, his voice rumbling in his chest. "Everything. Nothing. How lucky I am." She tilted her head to look up at him. "How lucky we both are." "The luckiest man alive," he agreed and kissed her forehead. As the stars began to appear overhead, Josephine allowed herself to truly let go of the last vestiges of guilt and fear she carried. Richard Holloway's death had been an accident, a terrible accident, but it did not define her. What defined her was this: the life she had built, the love she had given and received, the family she had created. She was not a killer. She was not a criminal. She was Josephine Kane, wife and mother, rancher and friend. She was a woman who had made mistakes but had also made amends. Who had run from her past but had learned to stand still. Who had been broken but had healed, and she was home. The years continued their steady march, bringing changes both large and small. Anna Rose returned from college and opened a school in Custer, teaching the next generation of Montana children. William and his wife had 3 children of their own, ensuring the ranch would continue into another generation. James became known throughout the territory for his skill with horses, and people came from miles around to buy his trained stock. Grace married a young lawyer and moved to Helena, though she visited often, bringing her own growing family. Xander and Josephine became the beloved patriarch and matriarch of their large, sprawling family. Sunday dinners at the ranch were raucous affairs, with multiple generations gathered around the long table, passing food and stories in equal measure. Josephine cooked for days to prepare for these gatherings, and Xander would sit at the head of the table, his eyes crinkling with joy as he surveyed his family. In the summer of 1910, they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary with a huge party. Half the county showed up, and there was dancing and food and music that lasted late into the night. As Xander and Josephine took to the floor for the first dance, the crowd watching and applauding, she looked into his eyes and saw the same love that had been there from the beginning. 30 years, she marveled. How is that possible? Because we chose each other every day, because we worked for it, because we never gave up even when things were hard. He spun her gently, his hand firm on her waist, and because I could never imagine my life without you. I love you, Xander Kane, more now than I did 30 years ago, if that is possible. It is possible, I know, because I feel the same way. They danced until they were both breathless and laughing, and then they stood together on the porch, watching their family celebrate, feeling blessed beyond measure. As they entered their 60s, Xander's health began to decline. Nothing serious at first, just the usual aches and pains of age. But then came a heart episode that scared them both, followed by a period of weakness that took weeks to recover from. The doctor warned him to slow down, to let William handle more of the ranch work. For a man who had been active his entire life, it was a difficult adjustment. But Josephine was there, encouraging him, keeping him company, making sure he took care of himself. They spent more time together, taking slow walks around the property, sitting on the porch, talking about their lives. "I am not afraid to die," Xander told her one evening. "I have had a good life, a full life. I have loved and been loved. I have children and grandchildren. I have built something that will last. If my time comes, I am ready." "Well, I am not ready to let you go," Josephine said fiercely. "So you had better plan on sticking around for a good while longer." He smiled and pulled her close. "I will do my best, but when the time comes, I need you to know that you made my life worth living. After Anna and Sarah died, I did not think I would ever be happy again, but you proved me wrong. You gave me more than I ever dreamed possible. You gave me the same. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me myself." She blinked back tears. "We still have time. Years and years." And they did have more time, though not as much as either of them hoped. Xander lived to see his 75th birthday, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, his great-grandchildren playing at his feet. He lived to see the ranch pass fully into William's capable hands, to see all of his children happy and settled. He died peacefully on a spring morning in 1915, Josephine holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you, I will wait for you." The grief was crushing, a physical pain that made it hard to breathe. Even though she had known it was coming, even though she had tried to prepare herself, nothing could have readied her for the emptiness of a world without Xander in it. But she was not alone. Her children rallied around her, taking turns staying at the ranch, making sure she ate and slept. The community poured out their support, bringing food and comfort, sharing stories of how Xander had helped them over the years. And slowly, painfully, Josephine began to heal. Not to forget, never to forget, but to accept. To be grateful for the years they had had together, rather than bitter about the years they had lost. She lived for another 12 years after Xander's death, staying active and involved in the lives of her children and grandchildren. She watched the world change around her, saw Montana grow and modernize, saw the old ways fading and new ones taking their place. But no matter how much the world changed, the ranch remained, a testament to everything she and Xander had built together. The house they had filled with love. The land they had worked side by side. The family they had created. On a warm summer evening in 1927, Josephine sat on the porch of the ranch house, surrounded by 4 generations of Kanes. She was 82 years old, her hair white as snow, her face lined with the story of a life well lived. William sat beside her, his own hair mostly gray now, his children and grandchildren scattered around the yard. "Are you all right, Mother?" "I am perfect," she said truthfully. Absolutely perfect, and she was. She looked at the faces around her, at the family that had sprung from her and Xander's love, and felt complete. She thought about the scared, broken woman who had stumbled into Custer all those years ago and marveled at how far she had come. Xander had been right. The past did not follow her here. She had left it behind and built something beautiful in its place. And when her own time came, just a few months later, she went peacefully, secure in the knowledge that her legacy would continue, that the love she and Xander had shared would echo through the generations. They buried her next to Xander on the hill overlooking the ranch, the Montana wind singing through the grass, the mountains standing eternal watch. And if you visit that hill today, you can still see the two headstones, side by side, marking the resting place of two people who found each other when they needed it most, who built a life together from nothing but hope and hard work and love. The ranch still stands, still run by Kanes, still a place where people can find second chances. Because that is the legacy Josephine and Xander left behind. Not just land and cattle, but the knowledge that the past does not have to define you, that it is never too late to start over, that love can heal even the deepest wounds. And somewhere, in the wind that blows across the Montana grasslands, you can still hear their story, a testament to the power of forgiveness, of redemption, of two broken people who made each other whole.